Hey guys, as you can tell, I am done with school, so I have plenty of time to come up and do some of these things that I've been meaning to do for 6 months. So previously, and actually still, what I've seen is we're just struggling with actually starting our chainsaws. How long should we let them run? All of these types of things. So what I did on the truck check sheet on engine one is I put on there in red, start the saw, let it run for 2 to 3 minutes. I can't tell you how many times I've heard it, where it's like, all right, we grab one of these things, pull it, fire it up. Okay, it starts and shut it off. Well, the problem is you never let the saw run up to temperature. Okay, and that can cause some issues, fuel flooding issues, fouling out of spark plugs and those types of things. So we want to make sure that we're letting those things run up to operating temp, okay? I've heard it in the past, hey, these Echo saws are junk. I take a deep breath in and I blow it off most of the time, but guys, they're not junk. They fire up, they operate just fine. We're not going to replace something that works, okay? But I think we do need a little bit of training on how to start those saws properly, because I think that's a problem. And the other thing is, when we're doing truck checks, we have to make sure that we're starting and running these saws, right? If we go 6 months and we don't start the saw, let me ask you this question. Would your saw at home start after 2 pulls when it's been sitting for 6 months? And the answer to that is no. I know mine wouldn't. It'd probably take me 10 pulls to get it going, right? So we got to make sure that we're going through and actually checking these things, okay? So we'll start them up, make sure they run. I'm going to go over how to start them. Because that can be a little bit of an issue too. And if you're not super familiar with chainsaws, and specifically Echo chainsaws, they can be a little bit finicky if you've never attempted to start them before. Okay, so I'll flip this. When you open the cabinet on engine one, and obviously I understand this is going to be changing, but both the the Husqvarna full-size chainsaw and our Echo K-Saw, if you look, they're bungee corded in, so they sit on these trays, okay? And really, these we call them pig mats, but those should be laying all the way across this tray, so that if any bar oil or anything like that leaks, it leaks onto the pig mat, which is an absorbent mat, instead of the tray. The other thing, don't disconnect the bungee cords from this side. That's why this is crimped down. I can crimp it down a little bit more. Okay, disconnect always from the left side. You can go ahead, pull the saw out. And this is kind of what I was talking about with these absorbent mats. I'll definitely throw some new ones on here. They're doing what they're supposed to do, right? They're absorbing oil, which is the job of it, so that our trays are not trashed. Okay, so I'll make sure I wipe this out and clean it, and I'll put some new mats in there. I cut them so that they're nice, but that's just me. I don't expect you guys to do that, but it's one of those pride things for me, okay? Echo roof saw. So if you notice, if you're not aware, the difference between an Echo roof saw or a roof saw, right, and a standard chainsaw is the angle that the blade sits at in relationship to the saw, right? And you can see on this Echo that bar is kind of angled down. That's so that when you lift up this saw, you are actually cutting into that roof. That's what it's made for, okay? So I'm going to walk this outside. I'll pause my video for right now. All right, back to work. Okay, so a couple things on this saw. First of all, okay, fuel is on the side here. Doesn't need to be cranked on. Could definitely use some fuel. Okay, that's something you need to be checking during your saw check. All right. Choke on this saw right here, pull it out, okay, and then there is a stop or on off switch there. Make sure it's flipped up, okay? So you're gonna pull this thing, and once the saw pops off, just stop, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and just, did you hear how that popped off? Once it does that, immediately shut your choke off. Now pull. All right, so what you saw, it popped off after 1 and started after a total of 3 pulls. That's how our saws should start all the time when we're checking them properly. All right. One thing I wanted to point out to you, it's not just starting the saws, guys. Is this thing going to be ready for you to rock and roll and use it when you need it, right? So you got to remember, a lot of times someone's life's depending on this. If you're venting the roof, what are we trying to do? We're trying to get heat, right? We're trying to get smoke out of the building. Someone's life depends on that, guys. So would you want your life depending on this saw? That's the question I always ask, right? Couple things I just wanted to show you. First off, make sure we're checking bar oil. Again, these don't need to be cranked so tight that we can't get them off of here, okay? Because otherwise what we're gonna end up doing, we're gonna end up breaking those caps. They should be snug so they don't leak, but they should not be cranked. Is there bar oil in it? It's low, right? It's low, so again, something we need to be checking. The other thing, what about the chain, right? Feels pretty good. It doesn't look like it's hanging off the bar or anything like that, right? Always make sure that your chain is on properly. That's the other thing we want to look at, right? Make sure it's facing the correct direction so that when you cut, this thing's actually going to work, right? I've had that happen, and it's happened here where the chain's on backwards, all right? So again, just some basic checks. When you go to engine 1, there is a chainsaw kit in here for maintenance. It says chainsaws on it. It's got bar oil in it. Okay, it's got a tool, so if we need to put a new chain on it. There's a spare chain for our roof saw. There's a spare chain for our battery-powered saw, which is in the back. All right, so again, same thing with the Husqvarna, okay? So we go ahead. This one, choke is in a similar spot. Make sure you choke it, right? Make sure this one actually has, if you look, it's got a slide on off, right? And it shows you which way to go for stopping. Okay, so make sure it's choked. Check your fuel level. That one's full. All right, we'll check our bar oil level. And I actually like this one a little bit better for checking just because the tabs are a little bit easier. But again, this one is absolutely cranked on here, guys. We do not need to crank them that tight. So we're gonna end up breaking them is what's gonna happen. I mean, with a tool, I can't get that thing off, right? So now we're on a fire scene and we're trying to get this darn thing apart or get that cap loose so we can check bar oil, and we can't do it. I don't know about you, but if this is me, I'm frustrated already, right? So now I got to use the pliers to get this cap off. These don't need to be on that tight. All right, I broke it loose. Full of bar oil, great. Okay, just snug on the cap. There's a seal on there, guys. This seal is what is sealing that oil in, not the threads. So just because you crank it tighter, it's not going to do anything. If it's leaking because the seal's missing, well, that's a problem we need to fix. All right, same thing. We'll take this one out. See how many times it takes to fire up this Husqvarna here.